Anything else? I would like to say that it is very important to have this control. Obviously, there is a socioeconomic aspect in the whole productive chain, not only uh, employment, chain movement, revenue, among other important factors. Also highlighted in Jacqueline's video regarding communication, we also have the social aspect. But if we talk more about the farm itself, we know that HLB control is important for several reasons. First, we want to maintain that asset, and we talk about the biological asset. If we multiply 500 plants per hectare, which is the current average of the citrus density, times 40 reals per plant, start up to the productive stage, and we are talking about 48,000 reals per acre. This is almost the amount, the value of the land in some regions. So the value of this asset, if we control HLB, will allow us to keep the biologic asset. And also, we have discussed productivity and yield. It's very clear that the greater incidence of the disease will provide an exponential negative curve, as Renato well said yesterday. We know about this. So we control either we control HLB, or we will lose yield, lose production. And it's important to have the best practices, the best processes and management, in addition to optimizing resources. We know that we have those 10 commandments, but how we comply with this manual, obviously adapting to specific situations and circumstances, depending on the farm. But we have to do all that spending the least amount of funds possible to do it well done, but not spending much. But on the cost side, once this presentation is the cost control, or better control cost, more important than knowing how much it will cost, we have to have the good management of cost, because the control cost is special. Each one will have their own, and that will depend on internal factors such as the chosen technology, the intensity of management, and the size of the border, if it's 5%, if it's 100%. For instance, some farms have 100% borders, so you have to increase the spraying, increase management, you have to increase frequency in 100% of the area, differently of other areas of 1,000 hectares that have 5% border, from 5 to 100. That will change a lot the cost dynamics. So the management of these aspects regarding internal factors is crucial. For instance, this is an interesting piece of data, and that has been discussed about small farms. The inventory stratified by site that was developed now by Sonda Citrus and has been just published showed that there are over 4,600 farms, that is 76.5% of citrus farms with up to 50 hectares. These farms correspond to 80%, 80,000 hectares, 20% of the area. So what do we mean by that? With the border issue, we have different situations in management and control depending on the intensity, on the relative share, and the relative participation of that border and the farm. But what draws our attention is that we face a huge challenge. How are we going to deal with the small farms that are 76% of farms? How are they going to overcome greening? It's interesting what Fernando said, not only thinking about the border, but how you are working with your surroundings. This is also important. This is an external factor And here you have the pressure on the surroundings, which will not only contribute to the success of the process, but also that's going to impact the cost control, the control cost of greening. And that cost usually is low considering its benefits to the surroundings, and that's clear. And we are realizing that every day in our properties because in fact, if you have 1.5% of total control or of greening control, as the prior panelists have said, that is very low if you consider the benefits you have in terms of the disease pressure. And will help us and that will contribute to management. So in addition to commercial groves and bearing yards, we have more pressure in the center and in the surroundings a little bit less. And also there's something else, the rainfall indexes. So rainy winters will have more sprayings, just as it has happened last year. Therefore, the pressure of the vector will increase, and that will require more control and consequently more costs. So, the idea here is to talk more about the management of the production cost and consequently the cost of HLB control, and not trying to label how much you're spending. Today we have seen an interesting range between 17, depending on the region, such as tico fruit in Costa Rica, up to 27, as Rodrigo mentioned. So it's interesting, and the best way is to discuss how we will manage this cost of control better than to have the figure in itself. And anyway, we had the opportunity of checking the cost published at Orifruti. It's a great work from the team of Markestrat, and here we have two different projects. The cost of HLB for two different citrus projects, one in the center-south region of dryland and a moderate dense area with a yield over the cycle of the project of 918 boxes per hectare. This is in CEPEA's publication in May. Now, in the region, in the north region, there's another project with irrigation and intense density with 732 plants per hectare, and the yield is of 1,085 boxes per hectare. This is very interesting. I suggest that you check it and you check this publication at Hortifruti Brazil. And these were very well gathered data. Experts participated in it, and I brought this data to go beyond that analysis. So here you see in project number 1 of dryland that there is a cost of 6,630,000 reals vis-a-vis the 8,072 reals from the project 2. And here they were able to separate of this 6,600 how much is the cost to control HLB. In the case of the dryland, 1,500, and the project 2, 1,800. Both of them have a relative share in the control cost and the operating cost of 23%. No different from what has been presented so far with real data. That's great, and we should highlight that this cost in total management are all costs of management in the farm with the labor, equipment, eradication, planting. Here we have input. This is total 370 coming up to 1,500 and project 2, and so we have all that input, mechanic operations, labor, eradication, replanting. So you see the final total here, and fertilizers are also included here. I think it's clear the idea, right? So now I brought the data to a chart that I like to use. But working with the same data, cost per box with no cost of management, HLB, and so on. So first we considered both projects, one represented by one of these boxes, and this is a square, and the triangle is project number 2. So on the X we have the total cost of production, and on Y we have productivity, we have the yield. So in project number 1 the total cost was around 6 something, but if I take away, if I remove the management cost out of the total cost, this cost will come back here. But that's not the case. If I remove the management cost, I will have a drop in cost, but I will have also lower production, lower yield. It's going to come down here. Okay, I'm not going to spend all of that. I will spend those 6,000 minus the 1,800. I will come out of this situation and come to this situation. What will be the result? The cost per produced unit here is 12.70, and here is going to be 14.42. Okay, great. 2 reals per boxes. That's fine. But hold that. Now let's consider project number 2, the irrigated project. It also has a cost of around 8,000 reals, and with a productivity, with a yield of 1,080, right? If we remove that amount, if we take that away, it will come down. But actually, the project will come down here. You not only reduce cost without losing the yield. As Renato explained that yesterday, so the result of this project, the cost per produced unit with the cost per box is 13, and the other project almost 15. Therefore, we should say that the reduction of the control cost or the elimination of the control cost will increase 14% the box of oranges. So not only to maintain productivity and not only thinking about maintaining your asset, but you will have a more expensive product if you're not controlling greening. But thinking on an economic point of view, we have to understand that the results per hectare will be different. And now, doing a quick math here, let's say that 13 reals here, in this case of the triangle, comparing that from 13 to 15. Let's say they sold the orange for 18, so they made 5 reals, 1,000 times 1,000. So they made almost 5,000 reals per hectare. But this other guy here that made 3 reals times 600 and something, he made around 2,000 reals per hectare. So what really interests us, and we have to remember what you have left per hectare at the end of the year. So these costs presented by CPE, and I apologize, I forgot to mention here, they did not take into consideration technical assistance, taxes, the return on the asset, the growth recovery, and other expenses. So the relative production here, as Renato has mentioned, this is the economic equation once again, so that you can understand it and see how important it is to have the HLB control. Thinking about the data of project 2, the irrigated one, of 8,000 reals of cost with this productivity, if we add 550 for harvesting as a standard, and here remember we have input, mechanic operation, eradication, replanting, so we'll have an operating cost of 13, right? So if we have no greening control and we start having more incidence of the disease, this productivity, this yield will decrease, so it will go down to 850, and I'm considering the data that Renato presented yesterday, and it goes up, the operating cost goes up to 1480. And if you have medium or high infestation, if you have sick plants up to the 4th year, it goes down to 543 boxes per hectare, and your operating cost will be of 20 rounds. So we do need to change the management urgently and also control the disease. We have to work with citrus growers, but we have to become successful entrepreneurs. And how can we do that? So a few steps to conclude the presentation. So in order to control HLB and to be successful on the agricultural activity, first we need to have a very clear objective in the long term regarding control. That is very important. Oh, I just want to follow the 10 commandments, but I want them to be efficient. I want to reduce the use of resources. I want to be successful. Consider that the decisions you make today will affect your business, your personal life in the future. Also important is to increase your networking. This is what we are doing here today. That will help you identify possible gaps in your current management. If you keep your radar on, you will be able to identify opportunities of improvement in your management. So I'm sure that you will leave here today thinking, I have something to improve in my management. How you can do that? Just by strengthening your network. Third, adopt and choose new technologies. Pay attention to new technologies in HLB's management, and new technologies. Usually they have a great potential to be adjusted, adapted to your farm, and you can be even more efficient in controlling HLB. Fourth, know your production cost. Measure your production cost. Oh, how much is yours? How much is the market's? How much is yours? Are you measuring your production cost? Do you know how much that represents in graining? So that helps us in making the decision. So what is not measured, what we do not measure, we do not manage. We are managers of a business, whether we are entrepreneurs in the agricultural activity or if we work in a company as managers. Actually, and finally, we have to be curious. To be curious is to be open to innovation, is to bring innovative aspects to our daily activities and looking for better ways of producing, look for better ways of managing the growth. And you have always to ask if the way that you establish your strategy and your HLB control, if that is the best, if that is the most appropriate to your situation. And finally, I would like to thank once again, and I would like to invite you all to think outside the box, especially after such an important event. And I would like to say that we have to work hard and never to settle, and to believe that HLB management can be improved always. That is adapted from Vincente Falcone. Thank you very much.